UConn football training camp open practice this Saturday is one day closer. We're going to talk through some of the things we noticed on Saturday at UConn football training camp. This is Locked On UConn.
You are Locked On UConn, your daily podcast on the UConn Huskies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back to another episode of Locked On UConn. I am your host, Matt Schonvisky. On tonight's show, we're going to be spending most of our time. It's going to be a mailbag for the listeners. Q&A. As you watch, come in with comments, questions, anything you want to talk about with UConn athletics. I will be here, whether it's football, whether it's basketball, any sport, conference realignment, the PCSA, any impact on the University of Connecticut Athletics Department. I am here to answer any questions you have. But first, we are starting on the football side. Football training camp in week now 2. Officially, they opened a week ago on Wednesday. Now a full week in. They are now in full pads. Gone are just the shells. It's football time here in the state of Connecticut. And I cannot wait until Saturday to see this team in person at the Rent for a full practice. It's been a very, very, very long time. Last time was the spring game. We haven't had a chance to check this team out for a full 2-hour plus practice. That we're going to get that at the Rent on Saturday. And there's a lot of things that I'm going to be focused on. Obviously, everyone that's going to be in attendance is going to be focused on quarterback. And by all accounts, everything you see on social media, all the videos that are being posted, all the quarterbacks are having special days. Maybe it's not all at the same time. Maybe it's not the same day, but every player at the quarterback position that's in the battle is putting up eye-popping plays and highlights. One of the players that they're throwing to, I recall seeing in the spring game, stood out to me in the spring game at wide receiver. That's Zy'marion Lang. April 30th in the spring game. Stood out to me a number of things from him. The way he catches the ball. The way he moves after he catches the ball. Zy'marion Lang, I saw at the spring game, April 11th. Even before we got to 11 on 11. Just going through warm-ups, routes on air, just catching the ball. It's very clear that this 6'3" wide receiver is somebody that's going to be a significant asset to the UConn football offense. And then if you fast forward to fall camp and some of the highlights that are out there, he is still performing, and he is going to be a go-to target for whoever wins the quarterback job. So Zy'marion Lang, definitely a name to keep an eye on. Ryder Treadway, another one at wide receiver. He's a young player. Was only a true freshman at Toledo last season, but he's another player that I expect to really show out for this UConn football program in his first season in Stores. And Shamar Porter is another player at wideout. He was the former top player in the recruiting class at the University of Kentucky in the SEC. Transferred into UConn, has had his moments here with the Huskies. He's had highlight reel moments, one-handed catches, touchdowns, etc. I feel like this wide receiver room, yeah, you lost a lot in Skylar Bell, but it feels like you've brought in some pieces that, hey, maybe you won't have this stud wide receiver that's going to lead the nation in catches and yards and touchdowns, but you're going to be able to spread the ball around. And for an offense that's brand new to this university, that's brand new to this group of players, I think spreading the ball around is going to prove very, very beneficial to the passing game here at UConn. And if you have an offensive line like we think, we talked last week extensively. We had a live show a week ago for 2.5 hours talking about this UConn football program. You heard myself and the TMT football podcast talk about exactly what we think about the offensive line, and there's depth there. And when you have depth at your offensive line, you're going to be able to sustain, knock on wood, any injuries that come. And it's going to open up things for your offense. You're going to be able to, like Nunzio Campanelli as an offensive coordinator has talked about this running game. It's kind of like a running back by committee. And if you're able to establish the run and then utilize what you have in the passing game with all your wide receivers and whoever wins the quarterback job. I think it's going to be an offense that is potent. I think it's an offense that defenses are going to have to deal with, and it's going to be something different each and every single day. So that's just some quick thoughts on the offensive side of the ball. Defensively, we didn't see anything last week on Saturday at the open practice. So that's something we need to focus on, is myself, anybody checking out the team on Saturday. Ryan Manalac's defense. Excited to see the 4-3, a return to traditional defense here with the University of Connecticut, traditional 4-3 schemes, and getting defensive ends to pin their ears back and go and pressure the quarterback. And then at the linebacker level, Kayvon Sherman, John Lista, whoever else is going to fill out that linebacker core, there's options there. We talked about the depth last week. And then the back end and the secondary is also an area I'm really focused on. I think is going to be a key for this UConn football defense. Jason Candle's strong suit, if you look back at his time at Toledo and developing players that have gone on to the NFL, secondary is prominently where you're seeing those players go to the pros. So there's been things written here locally about the front seven determining how this defense goes, but I still think the back end of this defense is going to be a very, very strong piece of this UConn football program. And the biggest thing is going to be how quickly can they gel and how quickly can they come together, because you've got the tune-up game, then you got probably your hardest game on the schedule in week 2 at home against Maryland. Can they go through this camp? Can they gel? And then for your first game of the year, regardless of score, I think you're going to probably see your starters play more than you would expect in a tune-up game, because they're going to have to prepare for week 2 and everything that they're going to see from Maryland. And that's going to be something I'm going to be watching as we get through here in camp. What we see on Saturday, is it the same unit, the same rotation like we see in the season opener? That will tell me that this staff has really understood where their players are at, where their depth is at, and are really fine-tuning things here from mid-spring or from mid-camp to the season opener to really get a defense that's going to be well-oiled machine, play together, play as one, all 11 as one. That's going to be a key for me, especially as you enter into the biggest aspect of your schedule at home against Maryland. For anybody that's been on social media, I think you know that UConn has put out their first episode of, call it Hard Knocks Light. It was on UConn Huskies, on the UConn Huskies YouTube channel. I checked it out earlier today. You got to hear from AJ Harrison, director of recruiting. You got to hear from Brad Bechet directly, who I've been talking about the last couple of shows about what he's bringing from a strength and conditioning standpoint, or the last couple of shows focused on football. And just the mentality that they're all bringing to the table. It's clear that they believe they can accomplish greater and bigger and better things with the brand of the UConn Huskies here in stores, as opposed to what they had at Toledo. And nothing against the Toledo program. Every time I say that, it's nothing against the MAC. It's nothing against the University of Toledo. It's just the University of Connecticut is a state school. We are a power conference brand. No doubt about it. Across the board, we have BCS conference championships, the brand. Everybody knows UConn in this school, this institution, the state funding. The University of Connecticut has a tremendous amount of support, more financially, support-wise from a fan base, than what this group had at Toledo. And to have that and to be able to have that is going to be very, very significant going forward, because it's going to allow this program to propel themselves forward and have a tremendous amount of success. And to me, that's the name of the game here. How do you do on the field on game day? Because off the field, like we've talked about on this show, everything has been done properly. From coming in, getting your staff together very, very quickly. Jason Candle knew exactly who he wanted to bring in right when he got the job, brought all the coaches he wanted, made a new hire from a defensive coordinator standpoint. Strength coach came in. He's been with him for 10 years, and he's really the heart and soul of a program. And when you can have that base as a strong starting point, and then use your connections and your relationships to bring in the amount of players that he wanted to bring in, 70, 80 new players. It's everything off the field has been a home run. But the big thing is, once we get to game day, what does it look like? And we're going to finally get some sort of semblance of that on Saturday. Tailgating lots open at 9. Practice opens and begins inside the Rent at 11 on Saturday at the Rent. If you're able to go check it out. If you're not able to go, I'll be there. I'll have some live coverage there, as well as a full breakdown of what we see in training camp on Saturday. As we continue, I do see we have some listeners, some viewers. If you have any comments, any questions regarding UConn athletics, please start firing away in the comments section, and I will answer your questions as we continue here on Locked On UConn. Today's episode is brought to you by Odoo. Running a business shouldn't feel like you're trying to connect a bunch of systems that were never designed to work together. One app for accounting, another for inventory, another for sales, and somehow none of them talk to each other. That's where Odoo comes in. Odoo is an all-in-one business management software that brings every part of your business together in one powerful platform. From sales and accounting to inventory and marketing, everything works in one place, helping your team move faster, stay organized, and focus on growing the business instead of managing software. The best organizations know that success isn't just about talent. It's about having everyone working toward the same goal. And that's true in sports, just like it is in business. One thing that really stands out is how sports teams, regardless of talent, regardless of level, can be stronger as one than more talented individuals because you get everyone pulling in the same direction. It's not just one great player or one great coach. It's a coordinated effort across the entire organization that makes it all successful. Great organizations win because operations matter, and that's why you should get Odoo. Try for free today at odoo.com/lockedon. That's odoo.com/lockedon. Back in on this live edition of Locked On UConn. Locked On UConn is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 sports podcast network in the world. If you like the content, please hit the like and subscribe button. Please keep coming back each and every single day. We're to the point where we're at the mailbag Q&A section. If you have any questions, feel free, chime in. Throw them in the comment section. We'll put them up on screen. I'll address them in real time, and we can have a conversation here. I do see we have a handful of listeners and maybe more coming in. So I will wait patiently, and I have more things to talk about, no doubt about it, which we can, as we wait for comments, if you have questions, please feel free. If you have any questions about football, basketball, conference realignment, you name it, anything to do with UConn athletics, please send a comment, send a question, and we will get to it. I do want to go back to, I'm going to switch gears here from the football side and talk a little about men's basketball, because I put out a show earlier today about Junior County, Colbin Landrew, Dan Hurley. We talked multiple times this week about his comments on the 5-5 from the 2022 class. I did not think UConn was going to be this far along in terms of their development and their ability to come in and compete for, hey, dare I say, another national championship run. Everything we're hearing out of stores, everything you're reading, everything you hear from fans that were at open practices is this team has everything you need to compete. And that seems to be a recurring theme regardless of any sport you talk about at the University of Connecticut right now. Be it women's basketball, men's basketball, the football program, baseball, softball, the soccer programs, you name it. Anything UConn's investing in, the hockey programs, just look at how they have risen to prominence over the last couple of years because of the investment and because of what UConn can bring. That also leads me to the realignment side of things. What will this athletic department look like from a success standpoint if they get the funding to joining a Power 4 conference? All they need is an opportunity, because we know the brand is there. UConn is the only school in the nation on the football field to have 3 Power 4 conference games at home. No other school that's outside the Power 4 has more than 1. And there's only a handful of other schools that have Power 4 conference games at home. UConn has 3. You got Maryland, Syracuse, North Carolina, which is going to be an interesting game because I don't know, for those of you that have followed UConn football over the years, Steve Belichick, the defensive coordinator under Bill Belichick, has had to take a leave of absence. We hope everything's okay with him. I know it's a health issue, but just a reminder of who is working on that defensive staff there. The only other coach on that staff with defensive coordinator experience is one of your former head coaches here at the University of Connecticut, who would be coming in here to UConn to play the Huskies with the Tar Heels and Bill Belichick. That would be Bob Diaco. So it would be an interesting game, not just Bill Belichick coming in, but on the defensive side, you could have a defensive coordinator that used to be a head coach here, and we all know about him as well. So that just adds an extra layer to what you could potentially see in that North Carolina game later this year. One of the biggest games that I'm looking forward to, obviously, I am a Patriot fan, obviously, with what they've done and Belichick did for that entire organization. Absolutely spectacular. The greatest coach coming in and coaching against your UConn Huskies is going to be quite the day and late afternoon at the Rent. Going back to basketball, Junior County. I really think his opportunity to play behind Silas Demery Jr. this year is going to be a flashback to the Kemba Shabazz year that they had, where Kemba led the team all the way to a national championship. Shabazz had some chance to come in off the bench, play some meaningful minutes throughout the year, and really play behind Kemba and see how a leader at the point guard position really is able to lead a team, learn, not needing to be the guy right off the bat, but have that experience behind a prominent point guard and see how it's done. That led to Shabazz getting a second national title as a senior. And certainly as this plays out here at UConn this year, the more we hear, the more we watch, the more deeper this team, I think we are. I think this team certainly can compete for another national title run. And it's all going to be about how everything comes together. The talent's certainly there. You got Demery, Mullins, Jaden Ross, Amenya, Hines as your starting unit, I think, come day one. And then your backcourt, you have backups across the board. You've got Junior County, who seems to be, and Dan Hurley we talked about it on the show earlier today, the furthest along of any of the newcomers coming in, including those that have experience. So to have that as the backup point, because we know what transpired last year with some of the issues that you had at the point guard position once injuries arose. Nothing against any of the players that were here, but Junior County seems to be on another level as a backup point who's going to be able to assume things going forward at the point guard position. So UConn set at the point. Braylon Mullins, I truly believe that he's going to be a candidate for Player of the Year. I think he's going to be the face of college basketball this year, and I think his development is going to take another step forward this season. And then at the 3, I think you start with Jaden Ross, and then Colbin Landrew, I believe, is going to be able to develop into, hey, potentially, you've seen the mock drafts that are out there, a lotto pick if he chooses to depart based on his performance this year. I find it absolutely ridiculous that there's mock drafts with true freshmen that haven't even touched the basketball at the college level out there. We saw it and heard it with Braylon Mullins, and every time Donnie Marshall talked about Braylon Mullins in the NBA draft his freshman season, kind of irks me because I'm kind of an old school guy that wants players to stay in college longer and longer and longer. But I say all this about Colbin Landrew because that just speaks to the talent that he has there and what you can expect at the 3 this season, whether it's Jaden Ross starting and then Landrew takes over or however it plays out. We don't know how freshmen are going to react, but this is certainly an opportunity for your 1, your 2, and your 3. You're certainly too deep because backing up Braylon Mullins at the 2 is Niels Mahowski. And everything we see, because UConn's putting a lot of things out there on social media, it seems like Mahowski is this Cam Spencer type who's going to be able to hit shots from the outside, is going to be able to bring that energy and adds to the culture and has that winning mindset and is going to be playing with a chip on his shoulder and is going to be firing up the crowd. And it's certainly something that's going to remind a lot of us, based on what I see, of Cam Spencer. So starting right there, that's 6 players in your at 1 and 2 and 3. And then we haven't even talked about Amenya and Amasov and Hines and Gilte. So this team is very, very deep. It's all got to come together. We need to see it, how it looks in the exhibition slate. And I love, once again, what Dan Hurley did with that exhibition slate, having Syracuse and Michigan State and Purdue as tune-ups before they get into their very, very, very difficult out-of-conference schedule. I'm going to keep talking whatever I want to talk about on UConn athletics here until I see comments show up. So if you guys want to send in any questions, I'm here to answer any questions you have. I need to take a quick break. I'll be right back. But if you got any questions, fire them into the comment section. I will read them live on air here and answer any questions you have as we continue here on Locked On UConn. Tonight's episode is brought to you by Indeed. Support for when workplace chaos hits and you need the right hire, Indeed Sponsored Jobs helps connect employers with candidates who match specific needs like skills, certifications, and location. So less time gets spent searching and more time gets spent finding the right fit. People are finding quality hires on Indeed right now. In the minute I've been talking to you, companies like yours have made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. One great addition can have a ripple effect on everyone around your organization. When you find someone who brings the right skills, attitude, and experience, it makes the entire group better. That's why finding qualified candidates matters so much and why tools like Indeed Sponsored Jobs can help make that process easier. Spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all your boxes. Less stress, less time, more results. When you need the right person to cut through the chaos, this is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. Tonight's episode is also brought to you by Kalshi. Before the season kicks off, everyone's making predictions. Who wins the division? Who makes the playoffs? Who's lifting the trophy at season's end? On Kalshi, America's #1 market platform, prediction market platform, you can trade those predictions in a live market. Will the Patriots qualify for the playoffs this season? Will the Jets? Will the Giants? Right now, each team is trading at a certain probability, meaning a $100 trade would pay out a certain amount if they clinch a playoff spot. On Kalshi, we're trading against peers in a live market, meaning there's no house. And as the probability changes, you can buy in and out of your position. Trade the draft pick, the game, and more on Kalshi. Download the Kalshi app and use code LOCKEDON to get $10 when you trade $10. Kalshi, Kalshi. Trade on anything. 18 and over only. Restrictions and eligibility requirements apply. Event contract trading involves risk and may not be suitable for all investors. Kalshi products are not available in all jurisdictions. Prices, values, and available markets may differ from those mentioned. For more information, see Kalshi.com/regulatory. Back in on this live edition of Locked On UConn. Just a reminder, Locked On UConn is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 sports podcast network in the world. If you like the content, please share with your family and friends, and please hit the like and subscribe button and keep coming back each and every single day. Check in the comments. I don't see any comments yet. So if you are here, you want to hear, you have any questions about UConn, you want to talk through anything on the football side, interested in anything on the basketball side, men's and women's, please feel free. We've talked through some thoughts on football training camp. We've talked through men's basketball. If there's no comments right now, I will talk a little about the conference landscape and how that could potentially impact UConn. I've talked previously on several shows. The Big 12 the ACC continuing to potentially be options for UConn. The grand scheme and the grand chessboard, call it, seems to always be moving. The PCSA was in front of the Senate. The negotiations between the Big Ten and the SEC went back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. It got to a place where the Big Ten and the SEC had an agreement, or were going to be supportive of the PCSA, the Protect College Sports Act, which, as it relates to UConn, it was going to cap, had it gone through and gotten approved via Senate vote, would have capped conferences at 19 teams apiece. It also would have put in a ruling that any existing P4 member would have to sit out for 5 seasons and play as an independent before they moved from, say, the ACC to the SEC. C1, Florida State, or Clemson, etc. Why is this important to UConn? It's important to UConn because if the bill passed before any amendments got added or any amendments were discussed, if that actually became law and conferences were capped at 19 teams and any existing P4 would have to be an independent for 5 seasons before they could actually start at another conference, that opens a significant amount of time or a significant amount of opportunity for UConn. Because if the ACC is going to exist and the Big 12 is going to exist and it's all going to be at the same level and there's not going to be this SEC Big 10 upper tier additional division above and beyond FBS football and everybody's on the same level playing field, all these conferences are going to be trying to get as much money as they possibly can to compete. And that would open up opportunities with the Big 12 because Brett Yormark, as we all know, wants to add UConn for the market up here in the Northeast. Connecticut, New York, this region. Why is that important? Because marketing deals will add money to member institutions within the Big 12. It's why the University of Connecticut and the Big 12 and Brett Yormark have had continuing conversations about potentially joining the league for years. This, if you think back 3 years now, it was serious. And then 2 years ago, it was serious to a point where Jim Mora thought UConn was going to be in the Big 12. UConn leadership thought they were going to be in the Big 12. And then we all know what transpired. The Pac-12 fell apart. Not just Colorado went to the Big 12 because that's who UConn was going to go with. Then came Arizona, Arizona State, and Utah. And UConn was once again left behind in that round. This time around, I see things happening differently. And the PCSA and everything that's been discussed and the maneuvering that's going on all behind the scenes seems to be pulling in the time frame for when realignment is going to happen. And without getting ahead of any stories, I do expect something to be out there from a national perspective within the next week. I'm not saying there's any movement. I'm just saying keep an eye on national publications regarding, once again, UConn and conversations potentially with other conferences. Doesn't mean it's happening. Doesn't mean that that's going right now. But that's something that I expect to be out there from a national perspective in the next week or so. I see some comments coming in. Let's throw them up. Master Shotgun. What do you see UConn's record being? 9-3 is 100% doable, I think. We talked about this in last week's show when the TNT podcast was on as well. I'm unsure at the moment, and I only say that because I have not seen a full practice with this team at full strength. I don't know not having seen this team and what the defense looks like and how they move around the field and seeing individual players for an extended period, for a full practice even, and not understanding who's quarterback yet, not understanding how more than just one receiver flows all together. I mean, everything on paper says very, very talented and deep team. But until I see it, I can't put a win-loss record out there just yet. I'll be much more comfortable answering that question after Saturday, after I get a chance to see this team in person up close for a full practice, more than just drills, more than just stretching. 7-on-7, 11-on-11. Even if it's scripted situations, it's going to allow me to see, all right, who's winning the one-on-one matchups? Where are the strengths of this team? At the linebacker level, are you able to play sideline to sideline? Do we have the guys that are going to be able to do that? Because that's going to be very, very critical, especially in our P4 games when you host Maryland and Syracuse and North Carolina. Speed is very, 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 very important. I expect it to be up there, but until I see it, I can't say, yes, it's 100% there across every critical key position. On paper, I do agree this team should be at least bowl game bound. But this is a very difficult schedule. If you look at the schedule across the board, Maryland, Syracuse, North Carolina, those are 3 teams. James Madison's also on the schedule. I do understand, and yes, they did lose their head coach to UCLA, but James Madison did go to the college football playoff a year ago. So that's a 4th kind of tough game right there. You go to Wyoming late in the year. There's a lot of games on here that I would say right now, are toss-ups. If everything goes spectacularly well, is 9-3 doable? Yes. Let's just bring up the schedule real quick. So Lafayette, I expect, yes, win, right? I think everybody would expect a win in the season opener. The Maryland game is going to be your hardest game of the season, I believe. Now, I know a lot of people have written off North Carolina. I am not. I am not writing off Bill Belichick. I am not writing off that North Carolina team. I'm not writing off that talent. I'm not writing off that coaching ability. I might be one of the ones that might have his head in the sand because Bill Belichick, but I saw a North Carolina team a year ago get better and better as the season went along. And I expect a Bill Belichick coach team to be better and better as the season goes along. So I say Maryland on paper might be your toughest heading in, but North Carolina might actually be your toughest game, especially because you don't play them until November 7th. So you get basically 3/4 of the way through another season at Carolina with Belichick, which I expect them to be very, very good the second half of this year. So I might be talking to myself into North Carolina is going to be the toughest game on the schedule and not Maryland, but neither here nor there. Lafayette, win. Maryland, let's say it's a toss-up. At Southern Miss, I don't know much about Southern Miss. At Miami of Ohio, I think Jason Candle and that staff are very familiar with them from their time in the MAC. You would expect UConn to have a more talented team. So let's call it 2-2/3-1, hypothetically. Syracuse, I think that's a winnable game at home. I do. I also I think every game at home is winnable. I don't think I look at any game on the schedule and say, hey, there's no chance UConn has a chance of hanging around. I also think the Maryland game on September 12th, I don't think Maryland is going to understand what they're going to be walking into from an environment standpoint that game. I think the crowd can have a very, very big impact. 3:30 start. You get a chance to tailgate most of the day. Early, late afternoon kickoff. And you know what the rent is like late in games or late in the day. early evening, late evening, night games at the Rent. It's just completely different than a noon start. I love how the Maryland game is 3:30. Actually, Carolina's at noon. I thought that was a later game. But the fact that Maryland's a later, I think that's just going to add to the environment. You get more time in the tailgating lots. You have more time to pregame before the game. And I think that's going to be an electric environment. And I don't think Maryland's going to be ready for what they're going to walk into that day. Just like Duke wasn't ready when they walked into that environment last season. So we talked about Lafayette. Maryland, I think it's a winnable game, but let's see. I don't know exactly what we have. Southern Miss, you would think UConn's going to be more talented. Miami of Ohio, you think UConn's going to be more talented. Syracuse, I think it's a winnable game. You just look at what Syracuse and UConn have done the last couple of years. Now, this was a brand new roster. So, again, we need to see exactly what it looks like on Saturday and how quickly does this defense develop and play together as one unit. But assuming things check the boxes, UConn should be in every game. At Temple, I expect UConn to be able to win that game. UMass, expect UConn to be able to win that game. And then you go to Air Force, which I would say is probably a tough environment on the road. Probably your toughest away game on the schedule outside of maybe Wyoming from a fan environment standpoint. Air Force, it should be a raucous environment, just like at Wyoming is a raucous environment. So those two games are probably your two toughest away games. Then you got Carolina at home. You got James Madison, Old Dominion, 3 games in a row at the Rent. And then you close at Wyoming. So listen, 9-3. I'm not ready to say that. I think a bowl game, if you're not there, is a disappointment. That's my thoughts before I see this team for a full practice on Saturday. Because, again, there's so much new. I don't really have a sense of, I know we've gotten 9 wins in back-to-back seasons, the last 2. I do know the talent that's been brought in here. But what's it look like? Everyone on the same page all together. That's why I can't talk about wins and losses at this stage. But this time next week, if I have another live show on a Wednesday night or a Monday night or a Tuesday night, maybe even Sunday night, I'll probably be able to put something out there, and I'll stand behind a win-loss record and projection. I'll definitely do that before the season opener. Let's keep moving. Joshua Alexander, UConn is better than Rutgers and BC in all major sports. How are they not in the ACC or the Big Ten? Timing, leadership at the time, lack of relationship building. Big Ten was a stretch. Rutgers is... I'm not going to talk badly about Rutgers. We know what they do on the field. Boston College, smaller, private. I think if any of those conferences could have had a redo, and it was UConn or Rutgers or UConn or BC, I think we all know who those schools are picking. I think Rutgers got the nod more so, and I've had a lot of conversations with those that have been in and around realignment over the years. And when the topic gets to Rutgers, why the Big Ten? That move mostly had to do, yes, New York City, but also it wasn't just yes, New York City. It's also yes, New York City, because we have all of our alums that used to go to Big Ten schools, Michigan grads, Penn State grads, Ohio State grads, you name it, working and living in and around New York, hence Rutgers, to go along with what Rutgers brings from a research standpoint, etc. So I know the Rutgers situation and what they've done on the field, on the athletic field, the story is what it is, but I think there were bigger things at play with the Rutgers addition to the Big Ten, and a lot of that had to do with Big Ten alum in and around the New York City area. Now, could UConn could have brought that too? I mean, it's not that long of a drive up to Hartford, but it is a longer drive up to Hartford than to Piscataway. So I think that was a key piece as well that allowed Rutgers to be an option for the Big Ten. And then UConn's not AAU, right? So that's another thing that UConn, I know, is working towards, but that's a very, very prestigious clubby type thing where UConn wasn't quite there yet. And if you follow conference realignment, you know the Big Ten only adds AAU schools. Nebraska was one. Then they ultimately got kicked out of the AAU, but at the time that they were added, Nebraska was an AAU institution. So, but the BC piece and the ACC, it's all about timing too. I mean, UConn had just gotten to the Big East from a football standpoint when BC left. I think BC's last year there was 2005? And that was UConn's second season as a Big East football member where they played a Big East conference schedule. Yes, they upgraded the stadium in 2003, but they didn't officially join the Big East on the football side until 2004. First game at home in the Big East was hosting Pitt. So I think there was a lot of questions about what can UConn bring to an ACC on the football field at that point in time. They were so new to it that I don't think it was an option at that time. But then you fast forward to 2011, 2012, they got outmaneuvered by Louisville. And what happened there? So was anybody asleep at the wheel here at UConn? I think yes. And then they weren't able to recover and have the right conversations to get UConn across the line in the ACC. And then, oh, by the way, the lawsuits that transpired that were led by Connecticut and Richard Blumenthal, and not getting into any politics, but they're the ones that put the lawsuit out there, and that held UConn back as well in the same light. So that was a significant issue that UConn had to face at that time. Let's keep moving. Brian. As a kid, I did homework and I listened to Arnold Dean, and people called in and said, UConn should get out of the Big East. They will never compete in hoops. Given a chance, we can do the same in football. Listen, this is a big topic that I think more and more people are recognizing. And it only took Jim Moore got hired in 22? And at that point in time, I think there was serious concern about what is the long-term future for UConn football. And if you don't get it right, what happens? And what Jim Mora did completely ended that conversation whatsoever. So give me one second, I guess. And now that UConn has started to win again, you're seeing out there comments on social media. I talked earlier in this show about how UConn has 3 P4 games at home. The only school that's not part of a P4 conference, no other school has more than one. And I think it speaks to the UConn brand. I think it speaks to the affinity that other schools have for the University of Connecticut, even though they haven't officially allowed UConn to join one of these conferences, but they play them in every sport. They played home and home. They know exactly what UConn is and can be on the football field. The sky is the limit for UConn football. You've heard me say that on this show before. If you had told somebody in the mid-'80s that UConn men's basketball was going to be the most successful basketball program in America for 27 years, the run that UConn's been on from 99 to today, they would have said you are crazy. UConn and Storrs, Connecticut is going to be the center of college basketball. Never mind men's and women's. Just talk about men's basketball for a second. And now the domination they've had on both aspects of college basketball. I don't know why you would write off this institution in anything they do. UConn football can absolutely become an absolute force, especially in this area of the country where there's not much other top level. You've got Syracuse, yes. You've got Boston College, yes. You've got Rutgers, yes. If UConn starts to get the ball rolling even more, what UConn's able to offer above and beyond those schools is a lot more because the brand is here. Yes, Rutgers, you can offer the Big Ten. Yes, Boston College and Syracuse, right now you can offer the ACC. But as I talked about earlier, that's not going to be the case probably long term. UConn should be part of the P4 club eventually here. So that's going to allow UConn to compete. It's going to allow them to be on the same level playing field. And if you ever get, I shouldn't say ever, when you get UConn into a Power 4 conference, the fan base is going to be rabid. They will be fully behind the UConn football program once again. Not just when Maryland comes in, not just when Syracuse comes in, not just when North Carolina comes in, but from the very first game to the end of the season. The stadium will be backpacked. Season tickets will be through the roof. The atmosphere at the Rent is going to be what it used to be on a game by game by game by game basis. That's going to be the situation with UConn football. And then on top of that, you're going to be bringing in even higher caliber level of player. And then, oh, by the way, you're going to have a head coach in here in Jason Candle who's going to develop the heck out of the talent that he brings in. And when you look at what he's able to do from a recruiting standpoint, and the staff is able to do from a recruiting standpoint, and then the strength coach, Brad Boucher, and his staff from a development standpoint, from a strength and conditioning standpoint, this team can compete nationally. We have not seen the peak of UConn football. We have not. And I completely agree, Brian, that UConn can compete nationally in football. Mark Cook, can't wait to be back at the Rent. Yes. We got Thursday, Friday, Saturday. 3 days away. 11 a.m. Cannot wait. Cannot wait, cannot wait, cannot wait. And then from there, 3 weeks after that, season opener, Lafayette. Dean. Yes, Brian. Yes, I know you meant. Wambag is politics why we're not in a Power 4 conference. Listen, relationships matter. And by politics, it's not traditional politics, but it's politics and positioning between the powers that be at member institutions. It's who you know. It's who you network with. It's who you've built, like I said, relationships with over the years. And when it's time to look out for each other, who has the relationships and who doesn't. And I think in the past, that's why UConn has been overlooked or got passed over, because I feel like the leadership that used to be here, not now, prior leadership, athletic director, president, maybe even the board at times, and those making decisions, maybe they were lazy at the time. Maybe they looked at, hey, we just made the Fiesta Bowl, and oh, by the way, we're winning another national championship on the hardwood, and oh, by the way, we have the best women's basketball program in the nation, and oh, we're a great academic institution, and we reside in a great market. That should take care of itself, right? Well, what type of conversations were they having at the time? Were they pushing the envelope? There's a reason why there's a narrative out there about Ward Manuel, for instance, as it relates to monitoring situations and things of that nature. If UConn at that time had put in the diligence, put in the time, put in the effort to make sure and leverage what you even have in the state with ESPN, build that relationship positively with ESPN, who is a factor in conference realignment, and having the necessary conversation. Because I know UConn has been doing this over the last couple of years. We've heard the governor of the state talk about the relationship with ESPN and really putting the university and the athletic department in the best position possible. You see from top down, even politicians now going to bat for UConn athletics and the University of Connecticut and trying to have the necessary conversations there. And that's going to prove to go a long way once it comes time to a vote to get UConn into a power conference. I know, don't want to get into politics. Yeah. And that's what I mean. I'm not even talking about politics either. It's more the political, like you could say the politics inside an organization. Let's say a business, for instance, the politics among executive levels. I'm not talking about left, right, etc. It's more who has certain agendas to and who's built the right relationships the right way when it comes time to decision making, and who's going to protect somebody over here versus somebody over here. And if you look how Louisville maneuvered when they got into the ACC, that certainly had an impact. No doubt about it. I think it's been reported on. There's a lot of commentary on it, and there's a reason why Louisville jumped over UConn. And it's because of that relationship building. We're right there. We just got to keep up the momentum with Candle. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think early season, UConn has a chance to make a statement. I put out a show about that. I'll talk about it a bit here again. UConn finally has the fan base back, my opinion. When I saw what transpired in that stadium with Duke, and as the game got going, and UConn continued to be in it and take the lead, and the game went back and forth, you didn't see fans head for the exits. You saw fans stick around because it was a meaningful game against a top team last year, a top team in the ACC, who ended up going on and winning the ACC title. UConn fans cared. For the first time in a very long time, it wasn't just 25% of the crowd or 50% of the crowd or 60% of the crowd. When you got in that fourth quarter, the entire crowd was in the game, invested in the final result. And that's the first time that has transpired at that stadium in forever. I cover the team. I have a media pass. I still sitting up in the stands, though. I can go down during the game and go on the field and do some things on the sidelines whenever I want. But I sit up. My family has season tickets. I like to watch the games with my family, with my kids, with friends. We have a row up in 202. For any of you that are in 202, I'll see you at the game on September 5th. But we like to enjoy it up there. It's been, I can count on my hand maybe one game other than Duke since, I want to say, maybe Randy Edsall's first year back, that we had a legit section behind us that was filled. The entire row. Next to us, above us, in front of us, it was packed. We have the normal season ticket holders that have been there for a couple decades, who we see every time we show up at the round. But for those that aren't there every day, it used to be we used to be in the parking lot trying to sell extra tickets. If somebody didn't show up, we would sell extra tickets because there were scalpers in the parking lot. There was actually demand for that game because of where Jim Mora got this program. And that indicates to me the fan base is back. And then the atmosphere in that stadium that night indicated to me the fan base is back. And it's critical. Going back to what I said about Maryland being the most important game to make a statement. It's not just to make a statement nationally that UConn football can't compete. It's to make a statement here inside the state of Connecticut and with your fan base that this wasn't just a Jim Mora one coach wonder to get UConn football back. They have to keep the momentum going with Jason Candle stepping in from the jump, because this is a critical year to keep the fan base engaged, to keep the interest there. Because like I've said on this show a lot, if UConn fans will be here for the top level of competition, or if you are a legit power and are winning game after game after game, they will show up. But the fan base will really be here for Maryland, Syracuse, and North Carolina this year. If there's questions externally by any prospective conferences, it's critical that UConn does well against Maryland, that they perform against Syracuse, that they perform against North Carolina. And to have success in those games, you have to play well early on in the year to make the fans come back. I've got a lot of friends that are very diehard UConn basketball fans that every single year are always skeptical. Even going back, though, even to when Randy Edsel was here the first time, we're always skeptical about the UConn football program for whatever reason. They even have tickets to some of the games this season already here on August 12th. And we're already making plans to have massive tailgates with all of our kids and et cetera, et cetera. If UConn doesn't play well against Maryland, you're going to start getting that skepticism creep back into this fan base. It's so critical UConn performs well to keep that momentum going, to keep that interest going, to keep that support going, and to reinforce that this wasn't a one-coach wonder with Jim Mora, that Jason Candle can come in here and continue immediately the success that was here with Joe Mora. That doesn't mean that UConn's got to beat Maryland. I'm saying they got to show that they can compete and play with a team of that caliber to keep the fan interest. Because, again, it's such a pro-type atmosphere here where if they're not playing their best and they're not playing the top level of competition, you're going to see, hey, let's go see the Patriots on Sunday. Let's go see the Jets and the Giants on Sunday. Maybe we'll watch UConn on Saturday, but we're not going to invest the time and the effort, et cetera. We still got to deal with that not being part of a Power 4 conference at this time. Mailbag, another comment. Benedict is a football first. Benedict understands the importance of football. Absolutely. Absolutely. He also understands the importance of UConn basketball and what that means to the state and this institution. So, yes, football first from his experience prior. Obviously, he came from Auburn. He played football. He understands college football. He was at Minnesota as well at one point in time. But he also understands the grand scheme of things. And there's a reason why UConn went back to the Big East. Because he recognized that basketball was suffering being in that A right here. So, yes, he's football first. He understands football. He's UConn athletics first. And UConn athletics, basketball is huge, obviously. But he understands the importance of football, 100%. BB Mine, are you going to the open men's basketball practice on Friday? It would be great to see your in-person perspective. I am not able to make it Friday. I am going to try to check them out. But this Friday, I don't think I'm going to be able to make it, unfortunately. Mailbag Ben. Oh, yep, we just talked about that one. Oh, BB Mine, it is the last one. I have not had a chance to get up to campus for a basketball session yet. If it is the last one, maybe I will try to get out there, although I do have a conflict this Friday, but we'll see what I can do. Mailbag, the atmosphere was so electric, visiting teams have no idea what they are. Listen, and then you saw today, not today, but this week, Robert Griffin III, once again, on video this time, talking about the atmosphere in UConn being the loudest place he was as a college player. He said it again this week on camera. And for those of you that follow UConn football on social media, you saw that comment. The game against Maryland, that game is going to be loud. I think that has a chance to rival the Duke game from an energy standpoint, from an atmosphere standpoint. We got close to it with NC State, the season opener, and Jim Mora's second year. But then UConn didn't hang around in the second half, and things kind of teetered off there. But, yeah, the experience that all those fans had at the Duke game, and then you get a chance to come back and see Maryland. There's going to be a lot of repeat ticket buyers that, hey, they checked out UConn against Duke for the first time in a long time. We just talked about how all around us we had first-time ticket holders, first time ever checking out a UConn football game. They had a great experience. We know that. We talked to them. They're going, hey, we're going to try to come back next year. This is an opportunity, the Maryland game. And then, yes, the rent gets crazy. And in the right circumstance, the rent is an insane place to play a college football game. And Duke didn't expect it. I know Manny Diaz didn't expect it. Maryland's not going to know. They're not going to expect the atmosphere that's going to be there in week 2. They will not. Because the narrative nationally, we all know what it is. I think the fact that you have players making those comments and that the atmosphere gets so electric is because, despite the narrative, UConn fans care about UConn football. Point blank. Anyone watching social media or that's on social media and follows me at UConnSN, I put a teaser out for the pump-up videos I usually do before the season. I'm in the middle of doing one right now. It's going to be a longer one. So you got a sample of that. I posted it, I think it was last night or yesterday evening. Going through those games, the energy in that stadium, even for the first ever Boston College game, we know what the Pitt game is, but going through some of these old games to pull in some of the old footage of UConn football, that atmosphere, it was legit NFL-esque. First down, second down, third down. It was crazy. You didn't have to wait for for third down to get up on their feet and loud. It was loud throughout. The first ever game, Indiana. The first Boston College home game. We know what Pitt was like. The players still talk about the Pitt atmosphere from 2004. About how insanely loud it was on that field. USF. There's so many games to point to. The electricity. Maryland does not know what they're in for. And I don't think a lot of people know, even in Connecticut, know what that Maryland game is going to be like from an atmosphere standpoint. For night games, yes, absolutely. And even not for night games, for big games. Listen, this is a very, very knowledgeable fan base. If you got a big game that's meaningful and you have a chance to win, regardless of what time it is, I remember, I think it was 2009, 2008, West Virginia game. It was a noon start. That was the loudest noon game we've ever had. Rivaled in the night games. So if you get the right team in here, in the right circumstance, the rent, regardless of time, is nuts. I expect that for North Carolina. I expect that for Syracuse too. John Enright, I hope they aren't conservative against Syracuse like they were last year. Well, hey, different team, different staff. Listen, that Syracuse game. This is taking me back now. Mel Brown's last touch, I think, was with 14:50 to go in the fourth quarter, if I remember right. And he was having a big time game, and his last touch, his game went to overtime, no less. His last touch was 14:50 to go in the fourth quarter. They threw it late when they had to. Yeah, I don't like looking back. Yeah, Syracuse was a winnable game. Is Maryland even any good? I think they're a very talented team. Do I trust Coach Loxley? Not sure. But listen, the last time UConn played Maryland, it wasn't that long ago. It was 24 regular season games ago. Season opener, 2024. The final score is 50-7. 50-7. UConn hasn't lost a game by more than 7 points since. UConn has one of the longest active winning streaks at home in the nation. I think it's top 10. 8 straight games at home. They have the longest streak for not losing a game in regulation in the country. They didn't lose a regular season game in regulation last season. Now, I'm not counting the bowl game in that streak. We'll see what transpires. But Maryland, yes. Maryland they're a middle-of-the-road Big Ten team, and the Big Ten is, I think, better than people give them credit for. I want to see UConn run up the score against Pill in North Carolina. Listen, I'm going to take the comment down, but listen, an opportunity to go against North Carolina and Bill Belichick is going to drive a significant amount of interest in this state, just given who he is as a coach, what he did for the Patriots. And then if you're not a Patriot fan, the chance to, it seems like yourself, the chance to root against him as well is going to drive a lot of energy in the stadium that day. Well, they got to beat Maryland. My standards for UConn football are pretty high. I have high standards too. I feel like there's pressure on this coaching staff to make sure they're competitive against Maryland. I don't know what to expect just yet. This team should be in every game. I remember that game. I was there in the student section against Baylor. The stadium was shaking. The Baylor game was crazy. It was a Friday night. Robert Griffin III, he was a true freshman. The game was one of the most entertaining games at the Rent because it was back and forth. Baylor scored, UConn scored, Baylor scored, UConn scored, Baylor scored, UConn scored. The physicality UConn showed that night. I mean, Baylor was a Big 12 team, but UConn beat them up on the field. And I remember, I think it was Art Briles or some of the Baylor players. I can't recall. I think it was ahead of because they played the very next year on the road. And I remember it was either the coaches or the players were talking about, we know how physical UConn is. We expect a tough physical game once again. Those mid-2000 UConn football defenses and the way they were hitting and stopping teams defensively added more. Because when you get big hits on the field, you know the juice is flowing in the stadium. You see the players putting everything in, and the fans got behind that. And I think that also contributed that night. It wasn't just a up and down game, back and forth game. The physicality UConn showed that night too was something that definitely delivered. John Aaron, I live out of state. Haven't been to a UConn football game since Rutgers in 2007, but I'd like to get up to a game this year. Absolutely. Maryland, Syracuse, North Carolina, definitely ones to pick from, but got a full schedule. That 7 opportunities this year. 2007. I'm trying to remember what transpired in 2007. That was the game when Rutgers was ranked, right? UConn and Rutgers was ranked. I think UConn was 15th in the nation when they played. 15th in the BCS or 15th in the AP. If I remember right, DJ Hernandez had a blocked punt, went for a safety. Donald Brown ran all over Rutgers that night. Terrence Jeffers had a long touchdown catch. That was a talented team on both sides. And Rutgers that year had the McCourty brothers on the defensive side of the ball. Those were fun matchups. And the nice thing about that is UConn and Rutgers are finally renewing their rivalry, which is something that I think has been long overdue. because the UConn-Rutgers matchups were always something to look forward to, because it truly did become, when UConn first joined the Big East, we all know about the conversations that were happening before Boston College left about, hey, UConn, Boston College, Gillette Stadium, Thanksgiving weekend, that's going to be the rivalry game. And then Boston College bolted, and then they never played again until, 2016? But then Rutgers became their rival. And it was a great opportunity to develop a hatred for another program. 2028, September 9th, Rutgers returns, and then the very next year, UConn goes to Rutgers September 8th in 2029. So in a couple seasons, we finally got Rutgers back on the schedule. Rutgers comes in to the rent first, then UConn goes to Rutgers. It's going to be nice to renew that rivalry. But, John, if you ever come out to a game, reach out to me on social media. We can definitely host you at a tailgate or something. Mailbag, Ohio State, Ole Miss, and Indiana canceled games at the rent. They know. Ohio State was never going to come. Ole Miss was coming. Indiana was coming. Tennessee was supposed to come. Michigan came. Ohio State was always a one-off. There was before COVID happened, I know UConn was finalizing a deal with Penn State. It wasn't going to be at the rent, but it was going to be a multi-game series. I think it was a 3-game series. There were going to be 2 games at Penn State. There was going to be 1 game, UConn home game in New York, I think at Yankee Stadium. That would have been a nice matchup, UConn Penn State. We know the conversations that happened with Notre Dame over the years, and ultimately that fell apart. What that would have done for UConn's independent schedules had you had Notre Dame scheduled throughout for 10 years. A lot of mistakes made by UConn administration and state leadership over the years regarding the UConn football program. But finally, it seems to be fixed. Mailbag, even the Liberty game was loud if you were there, and the stadium wasn't even. Yes. Liberty game it got UConn back to the bowl game. That was a fun environment. Zion Turner coming through. You look back, listen, he was the quarterback that led UConn back to a bowl game for the first time in a long time. I know a lot of fans, or some fans, thought he should have stayed and been the quarterback. He really struggled that year throwing the football, and I think Jim Moore and company had to move on from him and bring in additional quarterbacks like Joe Fignano. And I just wish that he got another shot somewhere else, unfortunately. Also, the Fresno game, I feel like, was pretty loud. I always thought it would be cool if Metallica. Agreed. I'm a Patriot fan. Brady was leading. No, jeez. Brian, what would football in New England be today if Yale and Harvard didn't downgrade their programs? We could bring back big-time football to the Northeast. I have a fan that can do what Calhoun did. Listen, Jason Candle seems unique from a standpoint of, look at where he came from. Mount Union. I look at another coach like a Matt Campbell. Look at what he did at Iowa State, of all places. Nothing against Iowa State, but Iowa State, before Matt Campbell showed up there, was not what it is today. Consistently competing for a Big 12 championship. Now, Iowa State was hindered because Texas and Oklahoma ran that conference for years and years and years. But Matt Campbell able to sustain success at Iowa State and then ultimately get the Penn State job. It took a long time, just as long as Jason Candle's been a head coach at Toledo. It took that long a time. It's interesting that both are moving on at the same time to move on to another opportunity. Matt Campbell's success at Iowa State, I'm using this as a key point. I'll get to it in a sec. Matt Campbell's success at Iowa State has been sustained. There's no doubt in my mind Matt Campbell has had opportunities. And it took an opportunity like a Penn State for him to ultimately move on. Jason Candle coached under Matt Campbell at Toledo. Matt Campbell left Toledo to take the Iowa State job, and then Jason Candle ended up being named to the Toledo job. Both were at Mount Union together, along with Nick Sirianni, if you know that whole story. So the big thing about Mount Union, because I went back and I watched some documentaries about that because I think it's applicable. Loyalty is huge. Loyalty is huge. Loyalty is huge. Loyalty is huge. When Jason Candle has sustained success here at UConn, he's going to get calls. Just like his players who are now in the NFL got calls to go to P5 or P4 institutions, but decided to stay at Toledo. Jason Candle, no doubt about it, was getting calls before coming here to UConn. It took a certain opportunity for him to move on here because he was getting offensive coordinator job offers left and right at highly prominent institutions like a Notre Dame and a Miami, and you name a top-end school, they were interested. Jason Candle's going to be loyal here at UConn. I'm not worried about Jason Candle having success, like significant success here over the course of 3 or 4 years, getting a call and saying, hey, I'm building something here at UConn. My job is not done. Loyalty is huge. And he's one of these types of people that I feel like is going to stick around long term, even if he has a significant amount of success very, very early on. And I just look at a Matt Campbell type. I look at Jason Candle. Decade at each of their institutions. So, yes, I do agree Jason Candle can bring this program to prominence like it's never been before. John Enright, both schools were ranked. I think you're going back talking about Rutgers. Yes. And I think that was the year. I think earlier in that season, USF was up to number 2 in the nation. They went to Piscataway. They lost to Rutgers. Very next week, USF came into the rent. UConn knocked them off. Then the very next week, UConn had Rutgers. Yes. Can we just talk about the old Big East football conference for a sec? How they were always nationally competitive. And the top end of the conference was so good. And how much talent came through the Big East back in the day that ultimately had great, not good, great NFL careers. The old Big East stacked with talent. And then West Virginia, had West Virginia not lost to Pitt, and had West Virginia gone on and won a national championship for the Big East Football Conference, could that have maybe the Big East would have stuck together a bit longer, having a national title to their name? I don't know. Or maybe West Virginia would have parlayed that into an ACC or ultimately an SEC invite. I don't know. But just looking back, had Pitt not knocked West Virginia off and they won a national title, what would that have done for respectability of the Big East Football Conference at that time? Johnny, any idea if BC and UConn's administrators are civil at this point? I think so. I think so. Just look at Boston College hiring away a UConn men's basketball assistant coach as their new head coach. Additionally, Boston College now has new leadership. None of the leaders that are currently at Boston College were around when all the stuff went down with UConn. None of the UConn administrators, for the most part, were around either. Same thing within the ACC leadership and at prominent ACC institutions. Donna Shalala at Miami, for instance, and others who were absolutely named in lawsuits. They're no longer around. So that can also contribute to, hey, yeah, the bad blood between UConn and the ACC and member institutions, yeah, that's probably gone these days. And it's why you've seen UConn and Boston College set up home and home football games. Next time UConn and Boston College play, 29 at the Rent, 30 at Boston College, 31 at the Rent. So 3 more football games on the schedule. I think that speaks to their relationship as well. Blowing up the Notre Dame 10-game package with Monday. Oh, my gosh. All because state leadership thought and UConn thought they had arrived and they were too good to not play a home game against Notre Dame. What would that have done for UConn football to have had a 10-game series with Notre Dame? Would have created memories? Would have created interest? You wouldn't have had as much fans leave the program as transpired if you had a UConn Notre Dame matchup on the schedule. Yeah. Completely a mistake. We're still adding additions to the practice facilities. Didn't we add on 2 outdoor practice fields? Yeah, so what they did with the practice fields, if you go on the Locked On YouTube channel, I did a video right outside the practice fields. Those used to be grass fields. What they did is they tore out the grass. They put in turf fields, brand new. It looks spectacular. So basically, they just upgraded the practice fields. They didn't add any areas. The turf fields are exactly where the old grass fields were, but it looks pristine. They did a great job. Again, I don't know if I like going on turf when your home field is grass. Just me. But that's just my perspective. John Enright, keep up the good work. Thank you. Appreciate that. Always good information. I appreciate that, John. Really do. Listen, UConn is UConn's a passion of mine. UConn's a passion of mine. If you followed me previously, at UConn SN, I've been around for a while. If you have followed me, started my own entity to cover the program because on the football side, because I didn't see coverage like the way I wanted it to be covered, the UConn football program in particular. And getting this opportunity on Locked On UConn is just it's awesome for me because it allows me to reach more fans than I otherwise would have, because my own entity was really focused on just on football. But here I have the opportunity to connect with basketball fans each and every single day. So talking about football. So it's an amazing opportunity to share with more fans further insight into the UConn football program. Kept UConn on the map. As a fan living in Massachusetts, I would have gone to the games at Gillette. Oh, you're talking Notre Dame. Yeah. There were going to be games at Gillette. There were going to be games down in the Meadowlands at MetLife. There would have been, I'm sure there probably would have been one game maybe at Yankee Stadium, maybe even Fenway. Maybe one of those games would have moved there, because you know how the Shamrock series that Notre Dame has, they like playing in baseball stadiums as well. They've played Boston College up in Fenway Park before. So yeah, it would have been all over the area in this region. And then had BC not left, I really think the Gillette deal would have gotten done. I really feel like UConn and Boston College would have had an annual matchup at Gillette, and it would have further driven interest into college football here in New England. But alas, they decided to head to the ACC, and that series fell apart because, Tom O'Brien and Randy Edsel were working on that thing. They wanted to even get talking about trophies. They wanted to have it a trophy game and all that. So fell through. If those two schools find themselves in a conference, I would like to see that as a potential opportunity in the future. Maybe not at Gillette every year, but definitely create a trophy game. If we're going to have a trophy game, it's got to be Boston. It should be Boston College. It would be great to have that rivalry back every single year. Anywhere what conference earlier Gino would prefer if they leave the Big East? That's still, listen, I think either conference for both of them would be a positive. I mean, if you just look at it from Gino's point of view, you've got not really a competitive team in the Big East, right? But then if you look at the ACC as currently constructed, you got some rivalries there with Boston College and Syracuse going back a ways. You'd have Duke and North Carolina, prominent college basketball programs. On the Big 12 side, Baylor, obviously. So I think there's an uptick on the basketball side for women's, no doubt about it. On the men's side, I know we like to think the Big East is a very, very strong conference. I think we all know and recognize that the Big East, as of right now, is very top heavy. And I think if you get into a conference, either the ACC or the Big 12, I think they'll take any preference, to be honest. Mailbag, I hate turf fields, but I guess for practice facility, turf is better and looks better to showcase. Yeah, I mean, the grass fields have been there since for forever. I mean, when UConn upgraded the program, even before that, the turf fields were there. I mean, the grass fields were there. I think they were even there when Memorial Stadium was there. I think because UConn used to practice, I believe, up there. I don't think they practiced at Memorial Stadium. I think they always practiced up on top of the hill. I'm trying to think back because Memorial Stadium used to be there when I was a student before they knocked it down. Yeah, the grass fields were there. Yes. Yeah. So what they did is they just put in turf over the grass fields, like I said earlier. Easier to maintain, especially in the winter. But again, I like to play on grass. John Henry would love to have Notre Dame UConn at Fenway. Linda needs new shoes constantly. Listen, when UConn first played Boston College at Fenway Park, it was great. I like football being played on a football field in a football stadium. I like it better. Just my thoughts, but just my perspective. All right. Anybody have any more questions or comments? John, I'm not reading that last one. Anybody else? Going once. Going twice. All right, listen, as we go, you can't beat the UConn UMass matchup. There you go, John. As we go, I'm going to do something live from the rent on Saturday, probably outside the stadium, maybe inside the stadium as I'm on the field. I'll also be up in the stands. So if anybody's checking out the practice on Saturday at the rent, I'll be in the stadium. If anybody wants to say hello, happy to do so. Just send me a note over social media, and I'll definitely look for you for sure. Between now and then, UConn men's basketball coverage, UConn football coverage. We're going to have some stuff out tomorrow on the UConn wide receiver core. We talked a little about Zy'marion Lang earlier tonight. I think he has a chance to be a staple in the UConn receiver core, as well as Shamar Porter, Ryder Treadway as well. There's a number of receivers across the board. UConn brought in a lot of talent, Oklahoma State transfer. So listen, UConn is in very good hands despite losing Skylar Bell at the receiver position. So that's going to be something we're going to focus on here as we head into Thursday. And then any other news that comes out regarding UConn athletics later this week, we will obviously be here on Locked On UConn. For now, that's going to do it for tonight. Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of Locked On UConn. Make sure you subscribe and follow Locked On UConn so you get all the latest episodes. For those of you on video, we send you the first ever 24/7 national Locked On Podcast Network YouTube channel on audio. Make sure you make your second listen Locked On College Basketball. For now, thank you all for coming in. Everyone that was sending in comments, even if you didn't, just the listeners, appreciate it. Mailbag, I appreciate that comment because, listen, I think we all love UConn athletics, and I love talking UConn athletics. So even if it's just a free-for-all in terms of comments coming in, I want to do these weekly, especially as we get into the football season. I'm going to be here weekly. I don't know if it's going to be a lot in the live portion of the show, but once we get into the football season, I'm going to start doing some film breakdown as well. So I'll definitely pick a few plays here and there, highlight some things, take questions in terms of how UConn's approaching certain aspects of games, etc. I want to add that into coverage as well. So certainly keep an eye out for that as we kick off the season later in September. But yeah, I appreciate the comment. And the fact that I have listeners like yourself stick around and talk through, seems like it's a fun thing for me to do. So I appreciate it. As long as I have even one person coming in and to talk with, I think it's definitely something we'll continue here for sure on Locked On UConn. Brian, appreciate it. You're doing a great job. Thank you. And thanks for listening every day. Okay. So for now, that's going to do it for tonight's show. Keep an eye out. We'll have another show out tomorrow on the wide receiver core. We'll probably talk more UConn basketball. If anything comes out on a national stage regarding anything to do with realignment, I will be here to talk through it, give my opinion, etc. Until next time, this is Matt Schonvisky, Locked On UConn. See ya!